Xian Yu Master, who tries to protect his disciples but is protected, versus all the top disciples in the cultivation world who are big shots. Yue Zheng is just an unknown disciple in the cultivation world, who was swallowed by a demon beast during an experience. Unexpectedly, he entered a world where martial arts were the top priority and became the leader of a cult among the masses, even possessing a group of disciples. She thought she would protect her disciples based on her own cultivation, but later found out that all of them were big shots. The 3 disciples had a pair of golden pupils that could see the essence of all things, but they were hated by the family members who wanted to murder and take their eyes. Yue Zheng stood up and said, "Who dares to harm my disciple half a point? I'll take your whole family's dog head." The 3 disciples were deeply moved and said, "Master, I am willing to dedicate myself to you and spend my whole life with you." The bloodline of the second disciple is rare, pure and pure. But it was controlled by malicious people using magic. Yue Zheng decisively took action to deal with the criminals and protect his disciples, starting from me. The second disciple raised his personal sword and swore, "I am willing to protect my master comprehensively," and pledged to protect him to the death. The little girl who was vying to become the senior brother became unhappy and said, I haven't spoken yet. It's your turn to protect her." Little Tuanzi has a mysterious identity, and his cultivation speed is incredible. He is constantly attacking people every day. Yue Zheng sighed and said, "I'll just lie down and be my salted fish." Keywords of the novel. All disciples are big shots, just me. Xian Yu has no pop-ups. All disciples are big shots, just me. Xian Yu. Download the complete set of TXT. All disciples are big shots, just me. Xian Yu. Read the latest chapter on Xian Yu. Chapter 1. Did I borrow a corpse to resurrect my soul? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1. Did I borrow a corpse to resurrect my soul? Little girl, hand over Lu Wusu quickly, and I'll spare you from dying. As soon as Yue Zheng opened his eyes, he heard this arrogant voice. She looked around in confusion and found herself lying in a bamboo forest, while several big men were standing opposite her, staring at her intently. Yue Zheng is confused. Didn't she be eaten by a monster? How could it suddenly appear here? Who is Lu Wusu mentioned in the population? After waiting for a long time before Yue Zheng could speak softly, a strong man across from him shouted, "Since you don't want to, don't blame us for being impolite." As he spoke, several strong men waved their swords and rushed towards Yue Zheng. Yue Zheng was startled and quickly activated his spiritual power. He cast spells and needed the formula, and put on a protective cover for himself. She couldn't see the spiritual fluctuations on the other person's body. It should be that her cultivation level was much higher than that of a rookie like her. A protective barrier may not last long. She needs to quickly find a way to escape. She was about to turn around and run away when she saw the people across from her, who were suddenly bounced open by her weak barrier. Seeing this scene, Yue Zheng widened his eyes. These people can't even see her barrier. Is it really a mortal without cultivation? The strong men were repeatedly bounced open by the barrier, all looking at Yue Zheng with a frightened expression. "This is a witch, everyone run." Yue Zheng grinned. Since she is an ordinary person without cultivation, what else is she afraid of them doing? Want to run? Ask my red cloud whip if they agree or not. As she spoke, she threw the red cloud whip out and used her spiritual power to control it to catch up with a few people, quickly tying them up into a ball. Yue Zheng clapped his hands and walked over, looking at several frightened and trembling strong men. He said fiercely, "Honestly, what do you do?" Several strong men were tied up and unable to move, and had to succumb to her lewd authority. "We are." Before finishing speaking, a voice suddenly came from not far away. "Master. Why are you here? I've been looking for you for a long time." As the words fell, a graceful young man dressed in white came to Yue Zheng's side. He looked at Yue Zheng with worried eyes and said, "Master, you haven't had any problems, have you?" Yue Zheng stared at the young man in white, his mind a bit confused. When he heard him ask, he instinctively shook his head. The young man in white relaxed his mind and looked at the few strong men who were bound. His face immediately darkened, and he drew his long sword from his hand, charging straight at them. The strong men panicked and quickly shouted, "Lu Wusu! You can't kill us!" But Lu Wusu didn't even blink his eyes, and with graceful and agile movements, he beheaded several people by the sword. Yue Zheng felt a bit anxious when he saw that the person he wanted to ask had been killed. But remembering what I heard when I opened my eyes, I looked at the young man in white before me and asked, "Are you Lu Wusu in their mouth?" Lu Wusu was taken aback by the words and then smiled gently, "Master, why don't you even remember your disciple?" Yue Zheng increasingly felt something was wrong. Is this person called his master? When did you take in an apprentice yourself? Shouldn't you have mistaken the wrong person? She couldn't help but feel a little skeptical and raised her chin, asking, "Where is this place? Who am I?" Yue Zheng asked this question, which made Lu Wusu suspect that the person in front of him was not his master. You can see this appearance, the demeanor of speaking, and Lu Wusu was very certain about the blue dress that his master loved to wear, which was his master. So, he patiently answered Yue Zheng's question. This is the great Xia dynasty that prioritized martial arts. Your name is Yue Zheng, the leader of the Yuanxing sect, and I am Lu Wusu, your second disciple. Upon hearing this, Yue Zheng squinted his eyes and his brain rapidly moved. The name is indeed her name, but she has never heard of the great Xia dynasty, let alone the Yuanxing gate. Lu Wusu also said that martial arts are revered in this place, and she clearly lives in the cultivation world. She thought of the travel story she had seen in her notebook before. Did she, as stated in the notebook, travel to another world and resurrect herself from a person with the same name and surname? End of this chapter. Chapter 2. The Different-Eyed Snake with Cultivation. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. The different-eyed snake with cultivation. If that's the case, she should be grateful that she can still use spiritual power and bring all the things on her body. Although she is only a novice in the late stage of chi cultivation in the world of cultivation, she has become invincible in this world where martial arts are the top priority. Since that's the case, she needs to take good care of the people and things left by the original owner. After all, it was through the identity of the original owner that she was brought into this world, instead of dying in the underworld. Thinking of this, she glanced at Lu Wusu and explained her abnormality. I just fought with someone and accidentally injured my head. There are many things I can't remember. Upon hearing this, Lu Wusu breathed a sigh of relief but also expressed some concern. So that's the case. So, how does the master feel now? Yue Zheng pretended to touch the back of his head and said, "It's okay, there's no big problem." Lu Wusu calmed down and grabbed Yue Zheng as he was about to leave. Then let's go quickly. The snake with different pupils has been trapped by the disciple and is waiting for the master to pick it up. Yue Zheng's eyes lit up when he heard the word strange-eyed snake. The cross-eyed snake is a good thing, with treasures all over its body, whether it's alchemy or materials for refining tools. The snake's blood can also be used to draw some special talismans. Thinking of this, she couldn't help but secretly sigh that the original owner had raised a good disciple, so that she could pick up the treasure as soon as she came. Good disciple, tell me where the snake with different pupils is and I will take you over. Yue Zheng said as he took out 2 flying symbols from his storage bag and decided to broaden his horizons for the new disciple. After Lu Wusu informed him of the direction, Yue Zheng pasted the flying talisman on the 2 of them and flew into mid-air with a swoop. The sudden surprise startled Lu Wusu. "Master, why did we fly out of thin air? This is my master's secret skill. Watch it carefully, I will help you accelerate." As he spoke, Yue Zheng accelerated and flew forward with Lu Wusu. Lu Wusu felt that the speed was too fast, so fast that everything around him could not be seen clearly, only the master was clear by his side. There was only a whirring wind in my ears, and no other sound could be heard. Lu Wusu shouted loudly, "Master, this secret technique is very interesting. I want to learn it, can I?" "No problem." Yue Zheng agreed quickly without thinking too much. Due to their fast speed, the two of them immediately arrived at the location mentioned by Lu Wusu. Lu Wusu spotted the location of the cross-eyed snake from a distance and said, "Master, the cross-eyed snake is right there." Upon hearing these words, Yue Zheng immediately lowered his speed and led Lu Wusu to dive down, and the Yi Ju floated to the ground. Suddenly, two people fell from the sky, startling the strange-eyed snakes entangled in bamboo branches. Yue Zheng has only seen descriptions of the cross-eyed snake in books, and now that he sees the cross-eyed snake, he feels that what is said in the book is much less accurate. The head of a snake with different pupils is large, and its skin is golden yellow. It has a pair of pupils as its name suggests, one red and the other green. In addition, Yue Zheng was also surprised to find that the spiritual energy in this bamboo forest was exceptionally abundant. She just stood here, and her spiritual energy kept drilling into her pores, making her unable to help but relax her body. Living in such a place with abundant spiritual energy, this cross-eyed snake naturally gained cultivation. Yue Zheng also noticed this and couldn't help but sigh in his heart. He didn't expect to come to this world and still have to fight against monsters. She didn't want to experience the feeling of being swallowed by a monster anymore. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. Mingmen Zhengpai Yuanxing School. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3. Mingmen Zhengpai Yuanxing School. Thinking about it, Yue Zheng explored the cultivation of the strange-eyed snake and then relaxed. Fortunately, it was only a snake in the early stages of qi cultivation. The cross-eyed snake is somewhat manic, seeming to dislike humans entering its territory. Especially when I saw Lu Wusu, his manic expression was exceptionally obvious, as if he was about to pounce on them. Yue Zheng no longer hesitated and used his spiritual energy to control the red cloud whip to approach the Yi Tong snake, attempting to capture it alive. The body of the Yi Tong snake is agile, avoiding the red cloud whip several times and occasionally spitting snake venom towards it. The venom on top is corrosive and touches the red cloud whip, making it emit a sizzling sound. Upon seeing this, Yue Zheng had no choice but to control the red cloud whip to attack the Yitong snake, and only attack its head. After all, its snake skin is a precious medicinal herb, and it would be a pity if it were damaged. Moreover, the body of the snake with different pupils is light and agile, but its head is large and bulky, making it easy to get started. Yue Zheng hit very hard, and in just a few strokes, he made it dizzy and disoriented, causing it to fall off the bamboo branch. Yue Zheng controlled the red cloud whip to catch the snake with different pupils and tied it up. Just as she was about to put the cross-eyed snake into the storage bag, a large group of people walked out not far away and said, "Hand over the cross-eyed snake, otherwise don't blame us for being impolite." Lu Wusu, who had been watching the battle all along, walked out with his sword and stood in front of Yue Zheng, saying, "Who are you? You dare to steal people's treasures openly." "I am Zhenghua, the senior brother of the Yuanxing sect. Our sect has been searching for this snake bile with different pupils for a long time and has issued a notice that if anyone finds this snake bile, they must give it to our sect first. Do you dare not comply?" The leader was very arrogant. Lu Wusu frowned and said displeased, "What kind of sect is the Yuanxing sect? It's so arrogant and unreasonable. We found this snake bile first, and our sect also needs it very much. We will not give it to you." Zhenghua raised his eyebrows and his tone slightly restrained. "Which school of disciples are you?" Lu Wusu answered forcefully, "Huanyue Gate, Lu Wusu." Upon hearing this, Zhenghua's expression relaxed quite a bit. The Huanyue sect and its leader are only a few people, and their reputation in the martial arts world is not good. It's really not worth being afraid of. If they can find the location of Huanyue Gate, it doesn't matter if Huanyue Gate is destroyed. Humph. Do cults like Huanyue sect dare to compete with our Yuanxing sect for things? Today, On behalf of the righteous faction, we will execute you. Zhenghua raised his arm and shouted loudly. As they spoke, a group of disciples rushed towards them with weapons in hand. At this moment, Yue Zheng, who had been blocked by Lu Wusu, poked out his head and said, "Good disciple, please let me teach you a lesson to these shameless people." Lu Wusu obediently stepped aside and exposed Yue Zheng in the opponent's view. Yue Zheng held the red cloud whip that had just been stained with venom and swung it towards Zhenghua's side. The red cloud whip instantly lengthened and pointed straight at Zhenghua's neck. Just as Zhenghua realized he was dodging with his head up, the red cloud whip drooped and directly swept away the long sword in Zhenghua's hand. Zhenghua looked up again and saw the scene of Yue Zheng smiling and breaking his weapon. He was instantly furious and shouted, looking for death. As he spoke, he snatched a weapon from someone beside him and accelerated his pace to run in front of Yue Zheng, while his other hand made a strange movement. Yue Zheng didn't notice anything unusual about him. As soon as he was ready for battle, he suddenly saw a dart flying towards her at lightning speed. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. Losing a Heart Guard. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4. Losing a heart guard. Immediately, there was a popping sound of sharp tools penetrating the skin. Yue Zheng couldn't help but snort. She was unprepared and didn't expect the dart to be in the center of her mouth. Upon seeing this scene, Lu Wusu's pupils trembled and he said, "Master." He was about to go and check on Yue Zheng's situation when suddenly someone rushed in front of him and stabbed him with a sword. He had no choice but to take action to resist, and could no longer draw to see Yue Zheng's situation. The disciples of the Yuanxing sect saw Zhenghua's dart hitting Yue Zheng's heart, and felt that Yue Zheng was destined to die, which greatly boosted their morale. Zhenghua was also extremely proud and pointed at Yue Zheng, cursing, "Little girl, dare you steal my weapon? Let me show you how your fellow disciples died before you die." Ha ha ha. Speaking, he waved his hand and gestured for everyone to attack Lu Wusu, ignoring Yue Zheng. Just as they were pouncing on Lu Wusu, Yue Zheng suddenly curled his lips and smiled, then forcefully pulled out the dart that had penetrated his body. There was no bloodstain on the wound, and there was no sign of injury at all. In this scene, everyone was stunned and even the movements in their hands stopped. Yue Zheng threw the clean dart to the ground and sneered, "You know, in the face of absolute strength, a surprise attack is useless." As she spoke, she waved her red cloud whip and quickly approached the crowd with light steps. The crowd dodged and retreated one after another. The red cloud whip in Yue Zheng's hand was waving non-stop, and with just a few strokes, it knocked the people in front to the ground. At this moment, the master brother of the Yuanxing sect, who was hiding behind the crowd, became anxious. He gestured and shouted, "Retreat." After everyone hurriedly ran back, he shouted again, "When the sects compete, my Yuanxing sect will definitely not let you go." After speaking, he slipped away without looking back. How could Yue Zheng be willing to let them just run like this? Letting go of the enemy means not letting go of oneself. She is not willing to do anything that would cause trouble for herself. She pulled out a flying talisman and wanted to chase, but was grabbed by Lu Wusu's arm. She struggled several times but couldn't help but stare at Lu Wusu's hand, lost in thought. It's really strange. At least she's also a cultivator, why can't she even break free from a mortal's hand? Lu Wusu didn't know what she was thinking, but explained, "They are at least disciples of the Yuanxing sect. If we don't give up, we may be targeted by the joint efforts of various sections. It's better to wait for the sect competition before teaching them a good lesson." Yue Zheng was a newcomer and didn't know the twists and turns between sects, but she was very dissatisfied with not being able to teach those people a lesson. When she was just ambushed, she was really injured. She just used a small cover-up to cover up the signs of the injury, so that everyone didn't notice. The dart pierced deeply. If it weren't for a protective goggles in her heart, she might have died again. Thinking of being attacked and injured, and losing a protective goggles as a result, she was furious and only wanted the Yuanxing sect to repay her several times. When did the sect competition they mentioned start? Yue Zheng touched his chin and asked. The sect competition will be half a month later, but it's a battle between sect disciples. Master, you can't participate, Lu Wusu calmly answered for Yue Zheng. Upon hearing this, Yue Zheng's face collapsed. Can't participate, how can she take revenge with her own hands? Moreover, the Yuanxing sect will definitely ambush its disciples in the big competition. If she cannot participate, then the disciples will be in danger. Master, don't worry. I will teach those people from the Yuanxing sect a good lesson in the big competition. Lu Wusu looked at Yue Zheng sincerely and comforted him. Yue Zheng looked at the skinny young man and couldn't help but squint his eyes. Can you beat those people? End of this chapter. Chapter 5. The third brother's name is Junxiao. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5. The third brother's name is Junxiao. Lu Wusu hesitated for a moment and said, even if I can't fight alone, with my fellow disciples, I can still pass. How many disciples are there in that sect? Yue Zheng asked, touching his chin. Including the master, there are a total of 4 people in Wanyu Gate. Now that the eldest senior brother is in seclusion, the third junior brother doesn't know where he has gone. After hearing these words, Yue Zheng felt thunder rolling over his head, and with the addition of a sect with only 4 leaders, what kind of sect is that called? At that time, there will be a big competition among sects, and only a few scattered disciples from Wanyu sect will appear. Who can we beat? Just as Yue Zheng was pondering how to make a living for his disciples, a young man ran out from the depths of the bamboo forest. The boy was wearing light blue clothes, holding a folding fan in his hand, and hurriedly turned around while running out. Lu Wusu was clearly surprised when he saw this person and said, Junior brother. Why are you here? This question made Junxiao, who was in a hurry to escape, notice the two of them. He smiled and waved his hand, Master. Second senior brother. Lu Wusu was about to step forward when Yue Zheng grabbed his clothes and said, this is Lao San. What's his name? I can't remember being a teacher. Upon hearing this, Lu Wusu was slightly taken aback before realizing that Master's brain was not good enough. He solemnly explained word by word, my junior brother's name is Junxiao, and my senior brother's name is Yue Zheng. He was the younger brother that the master picked up. Master, remember this time and don't forget it again. Yue Zheng nodded, unable to forget. If she remembered, she would definitely not forget. She has a very good memory. In just a moment of speaking, Junxiao had already run to the two of them. He covered his heart, his face pale. When he saw Yue Zheng for the first time, he confidently said, Master, you're injured. Yue Zheng was taken aback for a moment and glanced at the location of the injury. The blinding method was still present, how did he see it? How did you see that I was injured? Yue Zheng looked at him in confusion. Zhu Jun's face turned pale with a smile, but his smile was incredibly bright. Master, how could you possibly hide these golden pupils from me? Only then did Yue Zheng notice his eyes. The color of his pupils was exactly the same as the skin of the snake with different pupils. This disciple has a pair of soul-capturing golden pupils. Lu Wusu, seeing Zhu Jun's confident smile, also knew that his master was really injured. He was a bit anxious and said, Master, how is your injury? Yue Zheng was taken aback by his question and solved the deception on his body. Pointing at the bleeding wound, he said in a faint tone, it's just a flesh wound, but that person has damaged my master's magic weapon. I will definitely demand it back from him someday. As he spoke, he casually took out a healing pill and threw it into his mouth, then gave Zhu Jun a smile and said, take it and it will heal you. Seeing Zhu Jun obediently swallow the pill with a smile, Yue Zheng asked again, why were you so anxious just now? Zhu Jun explained with a smile, just now a fierce beast chased me. Fortunately, I ran fast. Now that I have left its territory, I don't think I will pursue it again. Seeing nothing serious, Lu Wusu thought of something and said with a hopeful tone, Master, you just said you want to teach me that secret skill. I think it's good to see this place. Why don't we start now? What secret technique? I also want to learn. Zhu Jun smiled and took the healing pill. The injury healed quickly and now he has regained his youthful vitality. Yue Zheng was taken aback for a moment, thinking that drawing flying symbols, which consumed mental energy, should not be something they could do. End of this chapter. Chapter 6. Can Master teach me flying? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. Can Master teach me flying? Immediately, his eyes lit up and he thought he could lead his disciples to cultivate immortality. In this way, whether it's seeking revenge or the annoying Yuanxing sect, the disciples can all withstand it. Okay, I'll teach you now. Yue Zheng smiled and pulled the two of them to sit cross-legged in place. After the two of them sat down, Yue Zheng began to teach the most basic method of breathing. This place has a strong spiritual energy, and Yue Zheng feels very comfortable sitting here. She was immersed in absorbing the spiritual energy around her, very serious, and did not notice that the two disciples exchanged puzzled glances when they heard what she was teaching. It's like saying, why did the master take out such basic things to teach? However, the two disciples did not raise any questions, but instead began to cultivate diligently out of trust in their master. When Yue Zheng opened her eyes, she found that both disciples were already focused on cultivation. She nodded in satisfaction, marveling at the ingenuity of the former bishop's disciples, who were all so obedient. After sighing for a while, she placed a protective barrier on the three of them and sat down again, pounding the contents of the storage bag. Even if the disciples have already started practicing, their level will not increase much after the sect competition in half a month. For the sake of insurance, she needs to make more magic weapons to bring to them. In her past life, although she had poor cultivation qualifications, her cultivation speed was very slow. But her hands-on ability is very strong. She knows everything about drawing symbols, arranging formations, and refining tools. This is also the reason why she survived through experience. Of course, in the face of absolute strength, all these fancy tricks are useless. This is also the reason why she will be swallowed by high-level monsters this time. The two disciples were obsessed with practicing, and Yue Zheng was also obsessed with refining weapons and drawing symbols. Unconsciously, time arrived 2 days later. Junxiao opened his eyes first, and as soon as he moved, his bones began to click. This noise caught Yue Zheng's attention. She lifted her head from a pile of props and looked at Zhu Jun's smiling eyes with some anticipation. Disciple, how is your cultivation going? Very good, very comfortable. Zhu Jun smiled brightly and picked up the folding fan, constantly patting the silly hair on his head. Yue Zheng explored and found no traces of spiritual energy fluctuations on his body. She suddenly felt a bit disappointed, thinking that this disciple might not have much qualifications. It has been 2 days now and she has not absorbed any spiritual energy. She sighed, feeling a bit regretful for the abundant spiritual energy in this place. But it's okay, she had anticipated this possibility and took advantage of this time to do many good things. By then, each person will receive 1 point, and they will be able to survive in the big competition. If it still doesn't work, during the big competition, she will secretly squat and watch. When she sees that her disciple is in danger, she just goes to the field to save people. On one end, Zhu Jun smiled and finally got up and stretched lazily. On the other end, Lu Wusu also opened his eyes, and his bones made a clicking sound. He moved his body and greeted the worried Yue Zheng, saying, Master. Yue Zheng slowly looked up, no longer hopeful about the progress of their cultivation. However, on this exploration, she was pleasantly surprised to find that Lu Wusu had spiritual energy overflowing all over her body. Although not many, that is also proof of success. Yue Zheng was a little happy, and she smiled and patted Lu Wusu's shoulder. Good disciple, your cultivation progress is good, and I am very satisfied with you, she said. Lu Wusu felt very happy when he saw Yue Zheng suddenly so happy. So, in a calm tone, he asked, can the master teach me how to fly? End of this chapter. Chapter 7. Master shouldn't accept it. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7. Master shouldn't accept it. Yue Zheng's smile suddenly froze on his face. How could this child never forget this matter? She now feels a bit regretful for agreeing so readily at the time. The disciples even struggle to cultivate and have to learn talismans. Children shouldn't be able to hold on to this kind of mental energy-consuming thing, right? Thinking about it, she suddenly thought of a basic means of transportation that could fly. Yue Zheng's gaze slowly fell on the sword in Lu Wusu's hand and said, I will teach you now. Lu Wusu also noticed her gaze, so he raised the sword in his hand and asked in confusion, do I need a sword to teach my disciple how to fly? Yue Zheng nodded naturally. How could flying with a sword be without a sword? She only uses rune paper for flying and red cloud whip for weapons, and doesn't have a sword in her hand to demonstrate. After thinking for a moment, she said, Wusu, you can chop a piece of bamboo for me, just as long as the sword. Lu Wusu nodded in response. Zhu Jun smiled and quickly raised his hand, saying, I'll go too. I'll go with my senior brother. Yue Zheng waved his hand to let them go, while he stayed in place. Zhu Jun smiled and put it on Lu Wusu's shoulder, quickly pulling him away. Until he was some distance away from Yue Zheng, he dared to speak softly and said, Senior brother, what's wrong with master? He taught us how to breathe before, but now he even needs to teach us how to fly the imperial sword again. Lu Wusu remained expressionless and said, maybe it's a brain injury. I can't remember what happened. When I return to the sect, I'll have the senior brother show my master his head. Is that so? Perhaps my cultivation is not high enough, and I didn't notice the injury on my master's head. The master just asked me how I was practicing, and I almost said that I had already built a foundation in the later stage. Fortunately, she changed her tone in a timely manner, otherwise with the master's temperament, she would be angry at her slow cultivation progress. Zhu Jun smiled with a lingering palpitations in his heart. Lu Wusu nodded and agreed, don't say these things to master. Although master forgets things, his temperament is still the same as before. If she knew that our cultivation speed was so fast, she would doubt herself again. I broke through the golden elixir this time, but I didn't control my spiritual energy well and almost caught my master's attention. It's still thanks to the master's earlier restraint talisman. Master, it seems that her realm has fallen a bit. Zhu Jun hesitated and said what she saw with a smile. Lu Wusu frowned, recalled for a moment, and nodded, saying, Master's realm has indeed fallen. Perhaps he was injured during a previous fight, which affected his realm. No problem. Both of us are guarding our master and not afraid of encountering danger again. The two of them talked about this and also chose bamboo. Lu Wusu drew his sword and made a sharp cut, cutting through the bamboo with his sharp sword energy. Zhu Jun smiled and quickly stepped forward, gently pressing the folding fan against the fallen bamboo. The bamboo was then propped up in mid-air by him, no longer falling down. With the cooperation of the two, a thick bamboo piece of the same length as the sword was quickly presented to Yue Zheng. Then, Yue Zheng held a bamboo piece and demonstrated how to fly with a sword in front of the two of them. She demonstrated seriously, completely oblivious to the fact that the two disciples looked at each other again, with an expression as if saying, sure enough. Both disciples had a somewhat helpless expression, but they still drew their swords and followed Yue Zheng to learn how to fly with a sword. Seeing his disciples learning quickly, Yue Zheng jumped off the bamboo and praised, you have learned well. Practice more and you will be able to fly higher and farther in the future. Lu Wusu jumped off the sword and pursed his lips, saying, Master, we've been out for a long time and we should go back. Senior brother is still waiting for us. He really can't continue playing. I really want to tell my master that they are all very skilled in flying the imperial sword and don't need my master's guidance again. Looking at the serious demeanor of the master, if she were to speak frankly, she would probably feel very uncomfortable. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Snake Skin Mask. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8 Snake Skin Mask. So, he just wants to hurry back and have his senior brother take a good look at his master's brain. Yue Zheng thought for a moment, but shook his head and said, "No, we can't go back for now." She also wants to find more natural resources and treasures to make tools for her disciples. After speaking, she thought of something else and asked Chong Lu Wusu, 2 days ago, when you found me and killed those people, why did they ask me to hand you over? Lu Wusu's eyes darkened, he lowered his head slightly and remained silent. Seeing his appearance, Zhu Jun smiled and quickly spoke up, helping to answer Yue Zheng's question. "Master, don't you remember? There are many people outside who want to catch second senior brother. They all say that second senior brother is a celestial demon and a lone star, a demon who kills with blood. It is also said that the blood on second senior brother's body can make one's appearance not old and their strength greatly increase. Therefore, many people want second senior brother's blood." Upon hearing this, Yue Zheng was somewhat puzzled and said, "As a demon, how can blood be like a treasure?" "Humph. It's just an excuse for killing and looting." Zhu Jun chuckled and snorted coldly, seemingly disdainful of those people. Yue Zheng nodded and looked at Lu Wusu's gaze again with pity. Lu Wusu noticed this gaze and quickly whispered, "Master, there's no need for that. Our Yuanyu sect has already been labeled as a cult. Whether it's our senior brothers or you are the targets that those heroes want to kill. Is the name of a cult also an excuse?" Yue Zheng asked. Seeing the two nodding, Yue Zheng asked again, "Since that's the case, why did the Martial Arts Alliance leader invite us to participate in the sect competition?" "Naturally, it was to defeat the entire Yuanyu sect in the sect competition. The whereabouts of the people in the Yuanyu Gate are uncertain, and they cannot find them, let alone the location of Yuanyu Gate. They pretended to be friendly and invited us. He has set the rules for the sect comparison, and at that time, he will definitely find a way to target the Yuanyu sect." Zhu Jun smiled and answered with a hint of anger in his tone. Yue Zheng frowned, his expression not very attractive. She couldn't figure out what treasure Yuanyu Gate had that could make the entire martial arts world miss Yuanyu Gate. After thinking for a moment, she said, "Then we won't have to participate in the Labor Shitsi sect competition." Zhu Jun smiled and excitedly said with a folding fan, "How can we do that? Participating in the sect competition is to knock down all those sect disciples. Who wants them to smear Yuanyu sect every day?" After hearing these words, Lu Wusu nodded in agreement and said, "There are many people in the sect, and we can take this opportunity to wash away the bad reputation of the Yuanyu sect." Yue Zheng felt deeply moved by Zhu Junxiao's words and knocked down those high-sounding bandits, which was something she wanted to see. And what Lu Wusu said. In fact, she didn't expect Yuemen to wash away his bad reputation at all. She only wants Yuanyu Gate to become stronger. As long as Yuanyu Gate is strong enough, no matter how many heavenly and earthly treasures her disciples have, others dare not think about them. If anyone dares to take action against Yuemen, then just hit him down. Thinking about it, Yue Zheng suddenly had a small plan in her heart. She chuckled and said, "Why don't I take you to explore the inside of the so-called prestigious and righteous sections?" The two disciples looked at each other, unsure of what she was going to do. Yue Zheng didn't explain much, just took out a few strange skins from the storage bag and handed one to each of them. After distributing, she explained, "In the past 2 days, I have made several masks from the skin of a different-eyed snake and covered them on my face, which can transform into any shape you want." End of this chapter. Chapter 9. Ting Yuanxing Sect defeats Yuemen. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9. Ting Yuanxing Sect defeats Yuemen. As she spoke, she picked up the mask in her hand and covered her face. With a thought, the mask changed and she became someone else. The two disciples who watched this operation were both a bit stunned, but they still put on masks at the signal of Yue Zheng. So, both of their faces turned into ordinary street faces that could not be found on the street. Junxiao turned into a white-bearded old man, and for this reason, he deliberately stuffed something on his back to pretend to have a hunchback. How about it? Do you still look like me? This improvement made Yue Zheng earn a lot of money in the cultivation world. Yue Zheng reached out and lightly tapped Zhu Jun's smiling forehead, saying, "I'm here to take you on important matters." The Yuanxing sect won the championship in a big competition. On the other side, Lu Wusu saw Zhu Jun laughing and flying happily, and also made a request to Yue Zheng to fly. This invisibility talisman was personally improved by Yue Zheng. People who stick the same invisibility talisman can see each other, but others cannot see them. I want to listen to the Yuanxing faction's wisdom in extracting tiger spirits. Most of the people drinking tea below came to the storyteller. At this moment, when they heard the storyteller ask, they began to get restless and put forward their own ideas. Yue Zheng raised his eyebrows and asked, "Which sect has such an old man?" Section 4, Section 3, Section 4 Sigh. The past cannot be mentioned again, Yue Zheng only feels wronged. Yue Zheng didn't know that they had determined her identity with just one action. Seeing Yue Zheng's head-tapping gesture, the two disciples exchanged a glance, both eyes filled with indescribable peace of mind. This is the master who likes to knock his head. With just one action, they can be sure. Well, I'll teach you later as a teacher. Yue Zheng flew against the wind and didn't have time to take care of the chattering three children. Not long after flying, Zhu Jun smiled excitedly and asked, "Master, is this the secret skill that second senior brother wants to learn?" "I really want to learn it, it's much more interesting than flying with a sword." Upon hearing this, Zhu Jun stood up straight with a smile and said, "Hee hee. Master, I understand. I just had a playful mind. It's only because Master's magic weapon is too good that I really like it." The three of them landed in an empty alley, making sure no one was paying attention before tearing off their invisibility talismans and swaggering out. Sanwa Zhu Jun laughed and flew with enthusiasm, then said, "Master, why don't you let me go and let me fly by myself? I found a lively tea house to sit down in." As soon as I sat down, I saw the storyteller walking up the stage, patting the wood and saying, "What are we going to talk about today?" Seeing him like this, Yue Zheng had no choice but to let go. At the moment when Zhu Jun let go of his hand, he smiled and his body tilted slightly, falling down a bit. Then he immediately flew up again, following the flight trajectory of Yue Zheng with all sorts of twists and turns. Later on, everyone used her invisibility talisman, but it became useless, and many people called her an unscrupulous merchant. Looking at the bustling town below, Yue Zheng took out 3 invisibility talismans and said, "Stick them up to prevent the people from feeling scared when they see us falling from the sky." Sure, let the disciple give it a try." Zhu Jun laughed and fiddled, trying to break free from Yue Zheng's grip on his hand. Yue Zheng felt a little uneasy and said, "Are you sure? What can Yue Zheng do? If her disciple is willing to rely on herself, then she can let go." So, the three of them happily flew over the town in the territory of Yuanxing sect. Listen to Yuanxing sect's fierce fight against Wanyu Gate. Right. We need to listen to how the Yuanxing sect seriously harms the cult Wanyu Gate. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. We strike the yellow dragon directly. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. We strike the yellow dragon directly, yeah. Yesterday, it was mentioned that disciples of the Wanyu sect were scared and wet their pants when they encountered the senior brother of the Yuanxing sect. We want to hear more about the follow-up. Upon hearing this, Yue Zheng raised his eyebrows and felt a little displeased. The people in the territory of the Yuanxing sect have indeed been brainwashed by the Yuanxing sect. One after another, they believe in the Wanyu sect cult, even when they are scared to wet their pants by Zhenghua. Not only did she feel unhappy after hearing this, but Zhu Junxiao's impatience was even more displeased. When she mentioned the sword, she wanted to ask the storyteller for clarification. He just smiled and said, "Okay. Today, let's talk about the story of senior brother Zhenghua after he met a disciple of Yuanyu Sect." The conference hall is much larger than expected, with 2 rows of seats in the middle, which looks like a place for discussions. So she quietly knocked out several patrol disciples at the foot of the mountain, arranged for them to change their clothes, and then flew directly up the mountain. Yue Zheng blocked the sunlight with his hand, and only then did he see clearly that the plaque on the door read, "Meeting Hall." "Well, I've had enough of this nonsense, Master." Yue Zheng nodded and then stood up and left. The storyteller seemed very satisfied with everyone's reaction. He suddenly struck the wooden block and everyone immediately fell silent. So Yue Zheng poked a hole in the door of the conference hall and saw that there was no one inside. He opened the door with a small crack and walked in. Someone behind me cursed loudly, "Who's talking nonsense? The Yuanxing sect is so powerful. If you don't agree, go defeat them." The Yuanxing sect is located on the mountaintop, and Yue Zheng wants to take his disciples and directly infiltrate the interior of the Yuanxing sect. The 3 of them pasted invisibility symbols and landed directly in front of a tall house within the Yuanxing sect. Lu Wusu also noticed the eyes of these people and said in a deep voice, "Master, let's leave as soon as possible. It seems that we are not welcome here." As mentioned last time, as soon as Zhenghua appeared, the disciple of Yuanyu sect scared and wet his pants, turning around to run. The 2 disciples behind quickly followed suit. Yue Zheng just chuckled lightly and then took his disciples to another place. Defeat Zhenghua. She doesn't mind taking action on such a small servant. Seeing this, Yue Zheng waved his small hand and set a soundproof barrier for the 3 of them before happily saying, "Let's just go straight to the yellow dragon. How about that?" Zhu Junxiao was very excited when he heard it, and he nodded hard, saying, Just smash the yellow dragon." Yue Zheng couldn't listen any longer, and roast, "Is it not Zhenghua's own book that praises Zhenghua so much?" 4, 3, 2, and 1 she whispered, but still received a warning from the people around her. Yue Zheng didn't explain much, just gestured for the 2 to sit down and listen to the book. When someone discovered it, they probably had been infiltrating the sect for a long time. He immediately used the ancestral skill of the Yuanxing sect, the snowflake sword technique, to knock down the disciples of the Yuanyu sect to the ground. Yue Zheng just saw that there was no one in this place, so he walked in. At this moment it was discovered that besides the meeting place, there were also doors on both sides of the meeting hall, and even behind the front seat, there was an inconspicuous small door. Yue Zheng pressed him down and chuckled lightly, "Don't worry, I would like to hear how the disciples of the Yuanyu sect were scared to wet their pants by Zhenghua." Zhu Jun smiled for a moment, somewhat puzzled. Yue Zheng saw the small door and had an intuition that there was a treasure inside. He couldn't wait to go in and take a look. She waved to her 2 disciples and said, "One person enters one door. As a teacher, go to the middle one. Be careful, you won't be able to tie the sect leader. It's also good to take some treasures and sell them." End of this chapter.